I gave those to my niece.
The kindergarten goods I made for Julia. Apparently, they're in my niece's hands now. I could tell from Carter's expression that he thought I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised at all. If anything, I was thinking, I knew it. Because I knew everything. And this alone isn't enough to shock me. You're hiding much bigger secrets. I said to Carter, who was grinning. Thanks for everything so far. The movers are coming today. I will never forget the surprised look on Carter's face at that time. My name is Marissa Davis. I'm 29 years old. I live with my husband, Carter, and our daughter, Julia. Honestly, I wouldn't say I'm happy. Just having a family makes you happy. There are probably people who think that way. But I believe that happiness can change greatly depending on the living environment and who you're living with. That's because I've felt it firsthand. After Julia was born, Carter's attitude suddenly changed drastically. Our first meeting was at a work-related drinking party. Although we worked at different companies, my boss was close with an employee from Carter's company, and whenever there was a drinking party, they would often invite their close colleagues. One day, that colleague brought Carter along. That was when Carter and I first met. Everyone was lively after having some drinks, but neither Carter nor I could keep up with the atmosphere. In the midst of that, Carter started a conversation with me.
It's really lively, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. A typical conversation you'd hear anywhere. Carter might have just casually started the conversation, but I was happy to be able to talk with him. It was probably because I realized I wasn't the only one feeling left out. From there, we slowly started to have more conversations. At first, we talked about things like drinking parties and our work, but gradually, we started talking about more personal topics. By the time the drinking party ended, our relationship had progressed to the point where we exchanged contact information and were already talking about when we could meet again. After that, Carter and I started communicating after work and even started going out together. 2 months after we first met at the drinking party, we began dating. Although I had dated a few other guys before, I felt the most comfortable and secure when I was with Carter. Our relationship continued to be good, and after about 3 years of dating, we got married. I had heard that some men change their personalities suddenly after marriage, but Carter showed no such signs and remained kind and caring. He always thought about me and our family. I truly felt lucky to be able to marry someone like Carter. I wonder how he will interact with our child when we have one. He'll probably be just as kind to the child. I continued my life with Carter, imagining a future together. However, both that life and the future I had imagined were completely shattered. The turning point was the birth of Julia. Carter's attitude changed so drastically that it felt like everything we had was a lie.
Hey, stop with the kid stuff and bring me the drinks already.
Handle the drinks yourself. I have a lot to do and I'm busy.
I don't care about that. I'm tired from work. Ugh, I don't want to move.
Even while I was taking care of Julia, Carter paid no mind and kept demanding what he wanted.
I've been working for you. How about doing something for me? Let me relax at home, at least.
If you're going to say that, I'm working too, you know? I'm doing work, housework, taking care of Julia, and on top of that, I have to take care of you?
Take care of me? What? Are you treating me like a child? Don't mess with me.
Did he even realize what he was saying? I was stunned by Carter's words, but after taking care of Julia, I brought him the drinks. If I didn't, Carter would just keep complaining. I knew that if I didn't make him handle things himself, he'd just get more demanding. Still, I couldn't help but worry that his shouting might have a negative impact on Julia, so I kept fulfilling his demands. Of course, none of this was Julia's fault. This is just my guess, but Carter's true nature is probably this unruly side of him. Since we got married and had a child, I couldn't just get a divorce easily. I think he started showing his true colors, realizing that now. It felt like he thought he could get away with anything and still be forgiven. Carter had said that he wanted children, and he didn't dislike them. Even if he did dislike kids, he shouldn't have been so harsh with me. I regretted falling for Carter's scheme. Even after that, Carter continued to try to make me do everything his way.
Don't you get it? I'm not like some free time loser like you.
I've told you I'm busy too, right? How many times do I have to say it for you to understand? If you have time to sit around drinking, you could at least wash one plate.
The intensity of my work is different.
You say that, but your salary is barely different from mine. It's the truth, so I couldn't help it. Since Carter didn't seem to understand reality, I thought I should make it clear. Of course, I wouldn't say anything like this if Carter wasn't being so arrogant. Even though his salary is about the same as mine, his earnings are still earnings, and it's true that I'm grateful for them. But when he speaks to me like this, I can't help but snap back. In the end, Carter never changed his attitude or actions, and time passed by. In fact, as Julia grew, his attitude became even worse. When Julia started to understand words, Carter began to intentionally tell her all sorts of things about me, whether true or not.
Mom used to have a bad personality.
Hey, what are you saying?
It's true, so it's fine to say it.
That's not true at all. When I pointed it out, Carter sulked and quickly changed his attitude. Julia watched the whole thing with a puzzled look.
You're overreacting to little things. Even if I tell her a little lie, Julia won't remember it anyway.
If she won't remember it, then there's no need to say it. Especially if it's a lie. Don't you realize that even little lies are still lies? If someone spread lies about you, you'd stop them, right?
Of course I would. It's a lie. But this is a different situation. I'm only saying the truth.
Are you serious? I was at a loss, holding my head in frustration over Carter's contradictory statements. Where did the Carter I liked go? Carter, justifying himself with his contradictory arguments, acting like he was in the right. I was tired of dealing with him. But when I thought about Julia, I couldn't bring myself to say I wanted a divorce. Every time I thought about divorce, I regretted not being able to see Carter's true nature before we got married. Even after that, Carter continued to be sweet to Julia and harsh with me. Since Julia started to understand words, he still repeated unreasonable things in front of her, but he never used foul language. Perhaps this was Carter's way of trying to be considerate. Even so, I can't help but think that his behavior of being so rude to others is questionable. And when he's really in a bad mood, he doesn't care where he is and will just curse. I have no idea what he really wants.
Julia is so cute. If her mother weren't you, she'd be perfect.
Well, you're the one who chose that mother, aren't you?
You always have to have the last word. Don't you ever just listen to what someone else is saying?
I'd return that exact same statement to you. I had gotten used to arguing with Carter by now. How many times had he told me that Julia would have been perfect if her mother weren't me? At first, those words shocked me. But Carter repeats the same words whenever he gets attached to something, so once I started thinking there was no need to take him seriously, I found it easier to calm down and not blame myself. Carter continued to repeat his selfish behavior. After work, Carter would drink while watching TV at home and boss me around. I would come home from work, with no time to rest, and had to finish the morning's housework as well. That alone was exhausting, but I also had to deal with Carter, which added more strain. On top of that, as Julia got older, I had less time to spend on taking care of her, but she still needed attention. It was completely overwhelming. The one saving grace was that Julia preferred staying inside, drawing pictures or watching cartoons, rather than playing outside. While I didn't mind her playing outside, I thought as long as Julia was enjoying herself, that's what mattered. However, Carter seemed to lose interest in both me and Julia, as his return time from work became later, and on his days off, he would go out. This was around the time Julia turned 2.
Hey, I've got overtime today, and we'll be home late. Tomorrow I have to go in for weekend work too.
Carter proudly talked about how busy he was and how much his company trusted him, saying it all with a sense of triumph.
I'm not like you.
In reality, Carter wasn't doing any overtime or weekend work. The pay stubs made it clear. I considered the possibility that he might be having an affair, but there was no sign of that whatsoever. Carter couldn't lie. If he were cheating, something would have slipped by now. Julia didn't seem to mind as much as I expected when Carter wasn't home. I thought it might be better to let him be, spending his time outside however he pleased, rather than arguing with him inside the house. How many times had I thought I should have been more responsible? But it was too late. I had to do what I could do now. That was what I resolved in my heart. However, that life wouldn't last long. It all changed when Carter's sister, Meredith, came to our house. One day, I received a message from Meredith saying that she wanted to visit, bringing her child with her. My relationship with Meredith was neither good nor bad, just normal. I didn't think there was any reason to refuse, so I accepted her request. But I couldn't help but wonder what had happened. She had never asked to come over before. I waited nervously for the day Meredith would come to our house. A few days later, Meredith arrived with her child.
Long time no see. Sorry for the sudden request to come over.
No, it's fine. Since we had met at a family gathering, Julia and Meredith's child, Kate, were getting along fairly well. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, drawing pictures and playing with building blocks together. We also had the chance to catch up after a long time, so we chatted about our lives and some small talk. However, since we didn't get to the main topic, I decided to bring it up. By the way, what was it that you needed today?
Oh, right. I got so caught up in talking.
Meredith took a sip of the tea in front of her, paused, and then made a request.
Julia and Kate are both about to start kindergarten, right?
Actually, Julia and Kate were the same age, and by chance, they were going to the same kindergarten. I had only recently found out that they would be attending the same one. Yes, that's right.
Well, before they start, we need to prepare things like drawstring bags, right? I've heard you're good at crafting, Marissa. Would you be able to make one for Kate as well?
It's true that I enjoy crafting. I wasn't sure who told Meredith that, or if it could even be called a special skill, but if it had reached Meredith, maybe I was good at it. However, to be honest, it was a tough request. I was already overwhelmed with my own life. Even though Carter spent less time at home, when he was there, he mostly just cursed at me. It was infuriating that, as always, he still tried to act like a normal father in front of Julia. Dealing with him consumed so much energy, and I continued to be troubled. I'm sorry. I'm too overwhelmed to take on that request right now. Oh, but the craft store I often go to can make it for you. It'll cost more than making it yourself, but the quality is really good. After turning down Meredith's request, I suggested the craft store as an alternative. However, as soon as Meredith heard my response, her expression and attitude completely changed.
You're turning down my request.
No,
I was hoping to save some money by asking you. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have come all the way here to ask you.
Her sudden shift caught me off guard, and I couldn't find the words to respond. She had mentioned saving money, so was she planning to not even pay for the materials? But Meredith, completely ignoring my reaction, kept piling on the words.
Unbelievable. I put my pride aside to ask you, and you can't even consider my feelings.
Put your pride aside. But in this situation, I'm not sure if I can make it the way you want. Also, I'm an amateur, so I think it would be better to ask a professional.
I don't want to spend a lot of money. That's why I asked you.
But they're about to start kindergarten, right? It's okay to spend some money to get things ready, especially for things they'll use there, right? I spoke in a stronger tone than I intended because of Meredith's selfishness. That only made Meredith even more upset.
Fine. I don't care anymore. I'm leaving.
Wait. And with that, Meredith left, taking Kate with her.
What's going on?
It's nothing. I tried to brush it off, not wanting to worry Julia. I hoped that Meredith would come to understand, but my wish was not granted.
I heard from Meredith. Why did you turn down her request? That's unbelievable.
There were various reasons. It seemed that Meredith had told Carter what had happened. As soon as he got home from work, Carter confronted me.
How can someone like you, with all your free time, not even listen to Meredith's request? What's wrong with you?
I don't have free time. I've got work, housework, and I have to deal with you. I'm completely out of energy.
What do you mean, deal with me?
I was exhausted. Meredith probably thought I was the enemy. And she immediately turned around and told Carter about our conversation. It wouldn't be long before both of them would be scheming against me. I had married the most impossible man. As I listened to Carter's shouting, my mind began to race. From that day on, Carter's behavior toward me became even more harsh. How could he be so confident in elevating himself and putting me down with his words? Why was he putting so much energy into insulting me? I felt like I had reached my breaking point. I finally started seriously thinking about divorce. I had originally wanted to wait until Julia was an adult, but now I knew I couldn't. But how should I go about proceeding with the divorce? Should I start gathering evidence to try to make the divorce his fault? As I pondered these questions, an unexpected opportunity came my way. It was the Sunday just before Julia was about to start kindergarten. I was pulling out the kindergarten supplies I made for Julia to check if I had forgotten anything. But when I looked in the spot where I had originally placed them, they were gone. I searched through other places where it might have been, but it was still nowhere to be found. Hey, do you know where Julia's kindergarten supplies are? I had put them away. I asked Carter, who was drinking in the living room. Without hesitation, Carter laughed and said,
I gave them to my niece.
It seemed that Julia's kindergarten supplies were now in Kate's hands. Carter looked like he wanted me to be surprised, but I wasn't surprised at all. Because I already knew everything. And this wasn't enough to shock me. There was a much bigger secret being hidden. With a grin on my face, I said to the smirking Carter, Thanks for everything so far. The movers are coming today.
Moving?
Carter's expression changed instantly, his face filled with surprise. Yes. Moving. I'm going back to my parents' house with Julia.
What? No, wait. This is too sudden.
Well, it may seem sudden, but I can't tolerate your attitude anymore.
Attitude?
Carter's expression turned into one of displeasure, as if he didn't understand what I meant. But no matter how Carter reacted, my decision wouldn't change. It was all too late.
Hey, what's wrong with me? What do you mean attitude? And if my attitude is the problem, why are you moving over the kindergarten supplies? And the movers, did you plan all this?
Carter fired questions at me in quick succession. I knew he wouldn't accept it, but I calmly addressed each of his questions one by one. First, about the attitude, I've told you many times before. You're the one who hasn't tried to understand.
I don't get it.
And about the kindergarten supplies. I actually knew that you gave them to your niece. I also know you gave Meredith money, claiming it was for the kindergarten expenses. The truth was, I knew that Carter had given money along with the kindergarten supplies, saying it was for their enrollment fees. That's why I deliberately asked him. I wanted to confirm if he knew where the supplies were. In reality, Carter looked pretty flustered. But he quickly tried to argue.
Huh? Why would you? Wait, no, that's not.
The fact that you're so flustered means I'm right, doesn't it? Well, no matter what excuse you give, I already know you gave the supplies and the money to Meredith, and I have the proof. No matter how you try to justify it, all you'll do is make things worse for yourself.
No, how do you know? Where's the proof?
At this point, it was as good as an admission. I overheard you talking to Meredith on the phone. Were the kindergarten supplies you gave her well received? How about the money? Is it useful? I know it was wrong to eavesdrop, but honestly, it doesn't feel good to have things done behind my back, so I recorded it.
Recording? What do you mean?
Yes. I figured you would deny everything unless I had proof. Honestly, I was already fed up with your attitude and was thinking about divorce, so it worked out perfectly. At the mention of divorce, Carter's face instantly drained of color.
Divorce? I only gave her the kindergarten supplies.
It's not just that, is it? How many times do I have to say it? I'm done. I'm tired of talking, so don't come near me.
Hey.
I could hear Carter's voice behind me as I walked away, heading to my room. I had already informed Julia that we would be going back to my parents' house. And she had agreed to it.
I will be fine with you,
she said quietly. As I listened to Julia's words, it was clear she didn't like Carter. At this point, it seemed like she might even hate him. Hearing Julia, I felt conflicted. Part of me was relieved that I hadn't forced her to be separated from Carter, but at the same time, I wished I could have done something to help her. I checked the time, the movers would be here soon. I packed up mine and Julia's things, waiting for the moment to arrive. A few minutes later, the movers arrived right on schedule. I quickly directed them to the hidden furniture that I had arranged so that Carter wouldn't notice and had it taken to my parents' house. Since my father had come to pick us up, Julia and I got into his car and headed to my parents' house. Seeing my father's face, waiting for us in the car, I felt a rush of relief.
Hey. This has to be some kind of mistake, right? You didn't have to go this far.
Even with the movers there, Carter continued to shout and cause a scene. But I ignored him and continued with the preparations in a calm, steady manner. The movers, probably used to situations like this, worked quickly and efficiently. However, even though I had made the decision to divorce, nothing had truly been resolved. To end things with Carter and Meredith as soon as possible, I couldn't afford to rest and immediately began taking action. 1 week later, I was at my in-laws' house. It was to settle things with Carter and Meredith. Without their knowledge, I had already explained everything to my in-laws over the phone about the situation and my intention to divorce. At the same time, I sent them the recorded phone conversation as proof so they could hear for themselves. After hearing the full story, my in-laws seemed shocked by Carter and Meredith's actions and decided to support me. Julia was being taken care of at my parents' house along with Kate. The sight of them laughing innocently as they entered my parents' house felt a little bittersweet. It seemed that Meredith's husband had no idea about the kindergarten supplies or the money situation. In fact, he didn't even know how serious things had become until the day of the discussion. He called in a panic, apologizing. He asked to be included in the discussion, but I refused. I only wanted to talk with Carter and Meredith. I knew that if it was just the three of us, I would definitely lose, so I involved my in-laws. But I thought that adding more people would only complicate things further. At first, Meredith's husband didn't back down, but in the end, he agreed and apologized again.
But why did you have to involve my parents in this discussion? It didn't have to be this big of a deal. This is something that should be between me, Meredith, and you, right?
Exactly. I don't get why Mom and Dad are on your side. What did you tell them?
Carter and Meredith both vented their frustrations, each expressing their thoughts in their own way. They were confronting me even in front of their own parents. If it had just been the three of us, I'm sure the situation would have been even more heated. I thought that without a third party, you two would pressure me into agreeing. That's why I had them help.
We're on Marissa's side because we don't think she's lying. And besides, we actually listened to the recording of your call.
You recorded it? That's the lowest.
It was tempting to point out who the real lowest one was. But I held myself back, knowing it would just take the conversation further off track.
Anyway, I've told you countless times. What's wrong with giving the kindergarten supplies to my niece?
If you just gave her the supplies, it wouldn't have become such a big issue. I'm upset that you gave away the items I made for Julia without asking. At least a word of permission would have been nice. Though, I still wouldn't have allowed it.
You.
But what really blew this all up is that Carter gave Meredith money without asking. It came from the savings set aside for Julia, right? I'm sure you wanted to spoil your niece, but what does it mean to put Julia second like that? You said Julia was so cute, but now you're not even thinking about her future. Carter had mentioned in his phone call with Meredith that Julia still had money saved up, implying that it was okay to take from it. If he hadn't touched Julia's savings, those words would never have come up.
That's...
The fact that you don't immediately deny it is proof that you're not thinking about Julia. If you really cared about her, you wouldn't even touch her savings. Seeing an opening, I continued to press Carter with statement after statement, pushing him further into a corner. But then Meredith intervened.
If you had just made the kindergarten supplies quietly, none of this would have happened. You understand that.
Are you trying to shift the blame?
Shift the blame? The truth is, you're the one in the wrong, aren't you?
Do you really think that? Meredith's pride was evident as she insisted that she wasn't at fault. It seemed she wanted to justify her actions by claiming she had no other choice since I had refused her request.
Of course I did. Why wouldn't I?
Have you ever thought about Kate in all this?
Of course I have.
Meredith's gaze didn't waver at all. She truly believed what she was saying. But just because you're thinking about Kate doesn't mean it's okay to steal someone else's things. You didn't get my permission, so it's the same as stealing.
It's not a big deal.
So, you think it's fine to let your child use stolen things? Those kindergarten supplies have Julia's name on them. What if Kate gets labeled as a thief? It's not you who will suffer from that, is it? Maybe she had already checked everything and erased the names. But what if she missed something? What if she didn't even realize the name was on the supplies? It frustrated me that, while claiming to do it for her child, she didn't see that all her actions were just for her own convenience. Unable to respond to my words, Meredith glared at me and bit her lip. But I continued without paying her any mind. That's why I'm asking for the kindergarten supplies back. And of course, the money too.
But I've already received them.
Receiving them doesn't matter. I don't want you to have anything I made for Julia. I need that money back, or there's no way to settle this. Please, just try to put yourself in my shoes for a moment. Can you honestly say, if things were reversed, that you would accept someone saying, I took your things and your money without your knowledge, but since I already got them, I don't have to return them? I couldn't help but heat up, pushing even harder. And then, my mother-in-law stepped in to support me.
Exactly. You won't return the things, and you won't give the money back either. You've always had a tendency to be selfish, but I never imagined it would go this far.
My mother-in-law glared at Meredith sharply and said that. She directed that stern gaze at Carter as well.
You too. You may not have been as outspoken about your selfishness, but this time, it's too much. You need to realize that what you've done is theft, even within the family.
That's an exaggeration.
Exactly. It's an exaggeration. And honestly,
Hey,
Carter and Meredith tried to continue talking. It was my father-in-law who put a stop to it.
enough of this. No matter how you try to justify it, what Carter did is theft. And Meredith, you took it knowing the situation and still refused to return it. What does that mean? I can't believe you don't think your actions are wrong. It's absolutely embarrassing.
At my father-in-law's words, both Carter and Meredith fell silent. They were speechless, unable to argue. At that point, all that was left was for Meredith to return the kindergarten supplies and the money, and for the divorce with Carter to be finalized. Or so I thought, but it wasn't going to be that simple.
But doesn't this make the divorce seem strange? Why over kindergarten supplies and money?
To me, it feels like there's a thief in the house. And even before this incident, I had already been thinking about divorce. Your attitude is terrible, and we can't communicate. After deciding on the divorce, I even started keeping a journal. I wrote down every insult you threw at me and every bad attitude you showed. I didn't suddenly decide on divorce, and I kept giving you chances. But you never noticed any of it. As I continued speaking calmly, I could see Carter's face turning pale. But, on the other hand, Meredith's face grew red.
divorced her already. You've got the divorce papers with you, right? Come on, hurry up and get them out. There's someone better for you than her, Carter.
But
Even though Carter had been insulting me so much, he suddenly started to panic when it came to the divorce. Was it because he would be at fault, or was there something else going on? Why are you resisting now? Don't you hate me? Don't you realize you're contradicting what you've been saying and doing?
because of Julia.
Julia? What about her?
I feel sorry for her.
So that's the reason. It seemed Carter still thought he was needed by Julia. I decided to enlighten him with the truth. If you're worried about Julia, she'll be fine.
What?
When I told her I was going to my parents' house, she said all she needed was me. Carter's face turned completely pale. You've been speaking badly about me to Julia, trying to look good in front of her, but she's never called you Dad. She always referred to you as that person. She told me that she's scared of you because you're always angry at me. It seemed that Julia had been holding back all this time just because Carter was at home. After we moved to my parents' house, she opened up about how scared she was of him. I felt so guilty and apologized to Julia over and over. Julia is really scared of you. You may have tried hard to act like a father, but
if the parents are separated?
I know you want to say you feel sorry for her, but if you're the kind of father she has, it would be better if you weren't around. If you really care about Julia, then divorce me. After all the earlier anger, Carter was now speechless, staring at me. He probably couldn't believe it, but it was the truth. As Meredith said, I have the divorce papers with me. Once you sign them, I'll file them. And later, I'll have a lawyer handle the financial claims.
Financial claims.
Meredith and Carter, I expect everything you've taken from me to be returned.
Divorce papers. Just sign them.
Meredith didn't reject or agree, she just kept repeating that. However, it seemed she couldn't defy my father-in-law.
You better return everything.
Upon hearing that, Meredith reluctantly nodded. Carter signed the divorce papers with trembling hands and slowly pushed them back to me. I took them, put them in my bag, and left it at that. On the way home from my in-laws, I immediately went to the city office and submitted the divorce papers. With that, I was officially divorced from Carter. After the discussion, I received repeated apologies from my in-laws. Carter and Meredith stood behind them, both with awkward expressions on their faces. A few days later, through my lawyer, I filed for compensation for the emotional distress I suffered, as well as for Julia's child support. Naturally, I retained full custody of Julia. I was also able to claim the money Carter had given to Meredith as part of the financial settlement. Reluctantly, Carter agreed to all of the payments. For now, the alimony and child support are being deposited, which brings me some peace of mind. Although he's still working, his expenses have increased significantly since the divorce, making life quite difficult. He's had to move to a cheaper place that is just barely livable. I also heard that, due to the continued financial strain, he started a part-time job. My thoughts on it were simple. I felt sorry for him, that's all. No matter how hard things get for Carter, I won't be the one to help. I hoped that Meredith would fully realize the consequences of her actions and reflect on them seriously. The kindergarten supplies were returned to me through Carter by Meredith. Since I had already claimed the money from Carter, it didn't matter whether Meredith returned it to him or not. After the discussion, I quickly contacted the other parents I met during the kindergarten tour. I made sure to warn them to be cautious of Meredith. The word spread through the group, and at the entrance ceremony, when Meredith tried to approach other parents with children in the same class, no one engaged with her.
Did you do something?
Naturally, the blame would fall on me if things escalated. Meredith spotted me and approached. But it was her husband who stopped her. He immediately pulled Meredith away from me, apologized profusely, and led her off somewhere. It seemed that, after that, she probably received a thorough scolding from her husband. I haven't seen her around, nor have I received any contact from her. It's still early days for kindergarten. I wonder how she'll show up at future events. I do hope she realizes that she's been excluded and changes her behavior. I was worried that my actions might cause trouble for Kate, but since Julia reported to me that she had played with her, I don't think any issues have arisen. Currently, Julia and I are living at my parents' house. My parents understand the situation and have welcomed us, for which I am deeply grateful. Commuting from their house to my workplace is manageable, so I'm still working. Julia's attendance at kindergarten hasn't been inconvenient either, and I thought about taking it easy for a while. Since moving in with my parents, I feel like Julia has become more talkative. It seems she was probably too scared of Carter to speak freely before. After hearing her true feelings, I regretted not acting sooner. What I can do for Julia now is to make her happy. She must have endured so much until now. I want to give her a life where she can feel happy. I wonder how she will build relationships at kindergarten as she grows. What will Julia look like when she's older? I just hope she keeps smiling forever. As I look at Julia's smile, I think about these things.